Are you interested in startups in Latin America? Are you interested in investing in high-tech companies in Latin America? In this episode, I'm joined by Arnaud, who's an expert in the area, and we're going to break it all down. Welcome back to the My Latin Life podcast, your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. My guest today is Arnaud. Help me with pronouncing it. Scenius, LatAm?
Yeah, I usually say Scenius LatAm.
Scenius. Cool. How you doing, Arnaud?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Bienvenue.
Merci. We can do it in French, Spanish, and English.
Cool. So tell us a little bit about, real quick, just who you are. I know you got a really popular, I guess, Substack, right?
Right.
And tell us kind of how you moved from Europe to Latin America and got involved in the tech startup scene.
Sure. So I'm French, but I started to work for a fintech in Paris in 2016. And quickly I got the opportunity to travel the world, being a digital nomad. Before it was cool. So it was 2016, 2017, before pandemics. And I spend a lot of time as any digital nomad, mostly in Southeast Asia and Latin America. I've been to Latin America before because I did a semester abroad in Mexico. So I wanted to know more about Mexico, but also getting to know other countries like Colombia, where I am right now, actually. And after a few years, I settled down in Medellin in end of 2019, so before COVID, to launch my first startup, my own startup, with two co-founders I met in a co-working space. And we've been building it for the last 4 years, 5 years, yeah, 4 years. And I was co-founder and CEO for 2 years. After 2 years, I decided to move back to Mexico. And as the startup is only focused on the Colombian market, my co-founder took the role of the CEO. And now he's full-time on it, and I'm just part-time on it. And getting back into Mexico in end of 2021, beginning of 2022, I saw I went back during the peak of startup in Latin America, in the world actually, but also in Mexico. And I really wanted to share with the world what I was witnessing and what I was experiencing, building a startup and also being part of the startup ecosystem. So I launched a newsletter called Scenius LatAm. And so Scene is the name. It's a concept. It's not from me. It's a mix of scene and genius. So the theory is that during the history of humankind, in certain place of time, there was some group of or an attraction of talent and genius in one place in one industry. So let's say the Italian during Da Vinci and all the great painter and
Right.
inventors in Italy, and then you had like Les Lumières in France, and
Right.
most recently you had like Silicon Valley attracting all the tech genius of the world, and so that's the concept of scene and genius in one
Yeah.
place
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
one moment in time, and
Yeah, and in Paris, what was it? The all the Americans moved to Paris, and they were like the authors, and it was in
yeah,
the 1920s. I forget what they
yeah,
called that.
1920s, yeah, with attracting writers from all over the world. So
Yeah.
it has
No,
happened many times
okay.
in history.
Okay. So one question I wanted to kind of kick off the podcast with is, what makes the startup scene in Latin America different from, say, in the US or in Europe? What should people know about, the unique characteristics of tech startups and venture capital in Latin America?
Well, the main thing is like startups, even if they are like digital and they are like supposed to be scalable anywhere in the world, at the end of the day, they operate and they sell in one market. So they have some constraint made by
Mm,
the market where they are operating to in. And I mean, it can be infrastructure, it can be politics, it can be economics, it can be culture. So at scale, when they become international startup, it doesn't really matter anymore. Even if big startup and big companies still have their strong market, but at the beginning it makes a world of a difference where you start your company. And obviously, starting, I always say, like, startup founder in Latin America are playing the startup game in hardcore mode.
Okay. And is that kind of the, I'm sure that's the prevailing narrative, but do you think it's true that it is a one market industry, or have we seen examples of startups from Latin America actually pierce beyond Latin America and gain global market share?
Oh yeah, definitely they can do it, and some of them have done it. But it's like the hard part of startup. It's, well, everything's hard, but like the beginning make a difference where you start from, and it has a long term impact on your company. So some of them succeeded in being global, but also you see a lot of Latin founder who start from scratch in the US. So some of them start in Latin America and then move to the US, but some of them are like, okay, if I will go to the US eventually, why not start from the US and then come back? So there is also this kind of founder starting from the US and then expanding back to Latin America.
Hmm. What's like the most successful startup in Latin America?
New bank.
New Bank, which is
Yeah,
Brazilian, right?
yeah, Brazilian. Yeah, New bank is top one. Mercado Libre on Spanish
Mercado
speaking.
Libre,
Yeah,
Rappi.
yeah, Rappi. Rappi, it's still they are talking about IPO. So IPO is being public, which is usually the main milestone for any VC-backed startup is going public, and this way they make the famous exit, and everyone who have invested in them get rich. And
Hmm.
Rappi, they have raised so much money. Rappi became super famous because they raised 1 billion from SoftBank. So that made the line, and that put a lot of
Rappi
pressure on
raised
them.
$1 billion from SoftBank.
Yeah, but I believe they didn't call all the capital. You know, when they make the headline, they always say like the maximum number.
Uh
Sometimes
huh.
they mix some equity and debt, but at the time it was the headlines. But what it means is like they had access to up to 1 billion. Obviously, they didn't get the billion for sure, but it put a lot of pressure on them to grow. And when you invest that much money on your startup, you are expecting an even bigger return. So the thing is like at the end of the day, they were limited by their markets because there is so much growth that you can have between Colombia, Mexico, and Latin America, and there are no way to compete in the US.
Hmm. Okay.
But Rapid's a big one for sure.
Okay. So those are some of the big ones. And then are there a lot of base hits as well? Or are there a lot of sort of medium sized exits and successes as well?
Yeah, but they are less known because usually when they make like a M&A exit, so someone buying them, they don't talk much about it because they are less big than what they are expecting. So it could be a very interesting exit, but VC are looking for more than 100x return. So
Hmm.
you only heard about big exit when it's a billion plus exit or acquisition, even in the US. And when it happens in Latin America, there are few, but they are very not known. Very few are known, and sometimes the founders they don't want to have the word out too much either because for security reason, because they are becoming millionaires.
Hmm. Yeah, I'd say this is a really good topic, honestly, where I've mentioned this in one or two podcasts just kind of randomly, but I could see this being a very central theme to this conversation today. Um, I don't even know if you call it a theme, but a topic where entrepreneurs in Latin America are just much more private because they kind of have to be because there's a little bit more risk of kidnapping or extortion or things like that. And so like in the US, you just walk down the street and you're like, I'm a millionaire, I'm a millionaire. Where and you do interviews and say exactly how much money you made and this kind of thing, and I just made $15 million this year, blah blah blah. Where in Latin America, it's really not like that.
No, not at all. Because they have to be careful. Like, I've heard a lot of stories of, yeah, people getting a little famous and then being faced with threat and sometimes kidnapping and stuff like that. So it's very difficult, a difficult situation, because as a founder, like, you kind of need to put the words out that you're successful, but at the same time you cannot put it too much out because you don't want it to be heard by the wrong people.
Hmm.
So it's a balance that's complicated. I know usually the founders that do it are founders who already lives in the US. So if you see a Latin founder being very open about the success he has, he's
Yeah.
most probably living in Miami or San Francisco.
Right, right. And it kind of affects things the whole way down because it makes it harder to even do like a meetup and get like 50. One time we were joking about how someone was posting, like someone who was like new to Medellin was posting on he was posting online saying like 7-figure Medellin entrepreneur meetup or crypto meetup. We're like, bro, you're gonna have a 7-figure entrepreneur meetup in Medellin? Like, how dumb are you? Like, you know what I mean? There's gonna be guys
Yeah,
like
I
waiting
saw
at
this.
the exit to rob you or something, and everyone was like piling in. Like, how stupid is this guy? You know what I mean? And it's kind of sad, right? Like, obviously, it'd be better if we lived in a high trust society where we could be more open about success, because I think that would honestly like trickle down and lead to more connections and ultimately more progress. But yeah, I mean, it's a funny thing, right?
Yeah, and it's bad for the ecosystem, like even in startup or entrepreneurship, because why so many Americans start a business? Because they are inspired by other people doing it and sharing with them, and they're like, oh, okay, so if he has done it, I can do it, and it's inspire you. Or
Hmm.
also on the other side, it's like, I've been talking with a lot of VC or investors from North America. I mean, Canada and the US or Europe, and they say,
Hmm.
yeah, we are very interested about Latin America, but there is no data, like there is no transparency. So we need to know, like, revenue, we need to know what to talk with, we need to know about exit, like, because at the end of the day, we need to have a thesis, we need to have some conviction in investing, and that's the issue. It's like, yeah, but the information is not public and no one wants to share it.
Ah, yeah, because I understand when a startup is raising money, they create sort of a pitch deck, and they create essentially like a Google Drive with like, maybe an Excel sheet with all their revenue numbers. And it's like very open. And obviously the VCs have to not share that information with people who shouldn't have it. But it's like very open. It's like, this is exactly how much profit our company is making, and this and that. And you send that out to like 20 VC funds, and God knows how many people actually like see that information, right?
Yeah.
Um, but in Latin America, I would imagine that the startups are less open, and they're maybe not giving you an Excel sheet with like your exact profit numbers, or at least they're like much more guarded about it.
No, no, no. They're open about it. Like, when you're already connected to the startup, they're open about it. Like,
Uh
you
huh.
won't invest like if you don't have the numbers. But I
Right.
mean, in France, for example, I don't know. There is a successful startup doing 2 million ARR and
Hmm.
being public about it. Like, VC can spot them and reach out to them.
Right.
So in LatAm, it only works if you already have the connection to the VC or to the startup.
Hmm.
But other than that, you don't have access to it.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, because there's so much. Yeah, there's so much more that can happen if you're like, let's just say from the VC side, if you can say, hey, I have $10 million to deploy in early stage startups. It's like, great, like I know who to go to if I need to raise money. But in Latin America, the VC can't really be that open like that. And then the company can't be open about, hey, we're super successful. So it's kind of like every player in the ecosystem is like more private, and they're like harder to get to. And ultimately, it probably makes a situation where the insiders have more exclusive deal flow, and maybe the founders who maybe went to better schools or have a better network through family or whatever get better access to funding. And so ultimately, being more private is benefiting the people who are already kind of on the inside.
Exactly. That's the issue. That's the main issue. It's not democratizing the entrepreneurship and the investing to more people. So it stay between the same people who know each other or who have access to this kind of capital. So, but it's changing. It's changing uh, because some funders are more open about it. Some of them are living in the US. Some of them take the risk, and it's not as dangerous everywhere in Latin America. So, for example, it's not the same if you live in Mexico or if you live in Chile.
Right.
If you're a
Or
founder
El
in Chile
Salvador.
or El Salvador, yeah. So it really depends where you're based, and that's why Chile is so successful because it's safer and there is more government support and stuff like that. So basically, if you're a founder from Chile,
Mhm.
it's easier.
And they're still running that program where they give you like whatever 50K, the Chilean government. What's it called again?
It was called Startup Chile.
Hmm.
I think it's over, but it was the first one. Like it was the first startup accelerator in Latin America. So many successful startups have grown from there. From my understanding, it's over. So I know about startups in Latin America, but like my friends are like Colombia and Mexico. But yeah, from what I've heard, it's not doing it anymore. But double check before it. Don't take my word for granted
It
from
was
that.
going for like 10 years.
Yeah, no, it's super successful, super successful.
Sometimes I think I should just like enroll my Latin life in that, see if they'll give me 50K or
And,
whatever.
and many founders, like foreigners, went through this accelerator because the
Yeah.
idea was also to attract talent. So many founders from Europe, US, everywhere, even some Asian, landed to Chile because of that.
Yeah, it was majority foreigners, I imagine.
Yeah, but no, there is others accelerators. Like it's not just this one, and it's worth checking them out.
So maybe we'll touch on El Salvador later. But I was also wondering, kind of continuing the theme of like maybe differences in Latin America versus other regions. You mentioned that a lot of Latin American founders move to the US. How does that work? Do they move like, and how does that work in terms of Latin American founders moving to the US? And what's kind of the relationship between the US ecosystem and the Latin American ecosystem?
Mm, so when they So a lot of startup founders in Latin America are doing copycats of a startup from the US. So a copycat is like, okay, these startups work in the US. I don't know, I will do the Stripe for Mexico or for Latin America. So in this case, you cannot really go to the US to sell to the US because you're just copying something already done in the US. But
Hmm.
when you have something innovative, it's worth going for the US market. So then you have a few options. You can try to do it as much as you can from your home country and sometimes travel there. So I don't know, right now it's LA Startup Week. So you try to go for a week during a startup week, or I don't know, in San Francisco or in Miami. But you're based in Mexico or in Bogota or whatever. It's complicated because at the end of the day, if you want to really build a network, going 1 week, it's good to make connection, but not to build a network. Building a network
Hmm.
takes times. So even if you can get some introduction to VCs, it's not the same as seeing these VCs again at networking events every week. But it's better than nothing, right? And some of them just move there. So if they have a mean to make money, if they have the visa, they go there. The Latin community is huge in America, so they always have connection before going. Like especially if you go to Miami, Miami is growing a lot. I mean, if you go to Miami, like for sure you know someone. Like even me, well, I went once to Miami in my life, like just 3 days, uh, but like I know if I'm going to Miami, I will meet founders that I'm in touch with just because they are Latino. I mean, into the Latino scene.
Hmm.
So that's how they do it. But it's not easy. It's not easy, but it works.
And coming back to sceniusmexico.substack.com, so what keeps you going, or like what because you've done over 100 articles or episodes, as I believe you call them. What drives you to keep going, and I guess what's the ultimate vision there?
It's a good question. I never really had a plan about Scenius Mexico, which became Scenius LatAm. I haven't changed the domain name yet, so it's still Scenius Mexico Substack. Um, so I'm a content creator. So and I'm also selling my services as a content strategist and acquisition. So basically, for me, creating content is just doing myself what I'm selling to other people, and I love doing it. Like I love creating content, and you start doing it with not. So when I started, it was because I had no network. So I came back to Mexico City. I had done my startup in Colombia because it was COVID. I hadn't built a network at all. So then I moved back to Mexico City, and I have no network. And I was like, what's the best way to build a network? Creating content, and it's a it's a hack. Like
Yeah.
doing content, creating content about something you want to connect with people, it's the best hack. In these 2 years, writing Scenius newsletter, which isn't that big, I don't have 100,000 follower, but it's big enough and it's good enough to get people attention and to give me credibility. So then it opened to me the doors to connect with people and to network. So the main goal was to do networking and to share with the world what I was really excited about. I was very excited about startup in Mexico and in Latin America. So I wanted to share it with the world and create content around it. And it was the easiest way to start. And then you start doing it and people start to love it. And at some point I was about to stop it. Like it was it was August, September, and October of 2023, I guess, or
Hmm.
two. I don't remember. But for 3 months, I stopped doing it, and then I would receive email or message from people being like, "Hey, what happened with it? Like, it was very good. Like, why don't you keep doing it?" And and then you just keep doing it, and it's just a project I like. Like for me, there is no like big plan. There is just one direction. I wanted to make it the best content. I want to write the best content about startup in Latin America in English. So there is a
Hmm.
newsletter which is a weekly newsletter about the most relevant news in Latin America for startup. And I'm also taking back. I did a few deep dives where I write a long form analysis about one specific topic, an industry or a trend, or one startup.
This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you in part by Crema Social. Crema Social is like TikTok for international dating. It's an app you can download right now on your phone, and 3 out of 4 people on Crema are single women. The app was founded in Colombia, so unsurprisingly, there are a lot of Latinas on the app, by the way. So, how does it work? Crema Social is a social meal experience where you invite a hot girl for a lunch date via video call and food delivery. New concept, so you'll have to try it out for yourself, but this is probably the best way to meet Latinas before you visit the country. So if you're in Latin America or planning to visit Latin America, download Crema Social now and start getting dates right away. There will be a link in the description to download, or just search Crema Social on your favorite app store. Have fun, guys. This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you in part by Bit Refill. Bit Refill is the best way to spend your crypto in Latin America. Purchase gift cards or mobile refills from more than 3,500 brands in 186 countries instantly, safely, and privately. You can also apply the code MyLatinLife at checkout to get 10% back on your first purchase. Go to bitrefill.com for more information. This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you in part by job stacking. If you are a remote or hybrid worker looking to maximize your earning potential, then Rolf Holtze, the author of Job Stacking, guarantees you'll be able to double your income. This is the exact system Rolf has used to take his own income and those of many others beyond 20K a month. So what is job stacking? It's this idea of working multiple remote jobs. You might have heard Rolf, he's worked 5, 7, even 9 remote jobs at the same time before. And by the way, job stacking works equally well for non-technical roles. So no, it's not just for the nerds. So if you're ready to job stack, then book a discovery call with job stacking and see how they can double your income in just 9 weeks. In the show notes in the description, there will be a link where you can book a call directly on the Calendly of job stacking and be talking with them as early as tomorrow about how to double your income as quickly as possible. Yeah, definitely a hack. And remind me again what happened with your startup. So you sold? Did you exit successfully?
No. I left operation. I still have equity in it,
Uh-huh.
and now I'm helping with content strategy and growth. And my co-founder is doing it full time. He's now the CEO, and it's still operating. If you need, so it's an accounting software. So we do accounting software for accounting firms, and we offer also the accounting service for startups and small and medium businesses. So it's hybrid. On one side, you have the SaaS. You can just pay for the software, or on the other side, you can pay for the service. And we're gonna offer you the accountant plus the SaaS plus the software. So if you're a small and medium businesses or a startup in Colombia, you can change your accounting for something more modern. And our value proposition is like being the like most digitalized uh, accounting firm in Colombia.
Okay, cool. And you guys raised money from VC?
No, we tried in 2021, but because of that hybrid model, which mix the service part and the software part, VC were like, no, like let go the service part and just focus on the SaaS. But we knew that from a business model standpoint, it didn't make sense, especially at the beginning, because we were making money and we were profitable from the services more than the
Mm-hmm.
software.
Mm-hmm.
And and we didn't agree with that, and we stopped talking with VC for a while, and we bootstrap it because when you offer a service, it's actually profitable. So we bootstrap it, and I know my we like right now we are not like totally close to raising money because mentality has changed and now VC are more open about this kind of hybrid business model because they are more focused on profitability than a few years before and now they understand the value in making money. So we are not totally close to it, but it's not like our main priority right now raising money. It will be more an opportunity decision.
Got it. So you've never raised money from VC, I guess, ultimately.
No. I never raised money from VC. And now I'm on the other side because I'm working with a VC. So I'm a venture partner in an impact firm. So
Oh,
it's a
cool.
US firm, like it's a US VC doing impact investing in Latin America, and I'm a venture partner with them.
Oh, cool. What's the name?
It's called Zenani Capital. Z
Zenany.
Zenani, yeah. Zenani Capital, and we are deploying now.
Okay, Zenany.
Uh,
Zenany. Cool. Yeah, this is something I kind of want to maybe do in the future. Okay. Wow. Now I know your last name.
yeah,
Devaney. Am I
yeah.
saying that right?
Yeah, Arnaud Thévenet.
Devaney. Cool. I like it. Yeah, this is something I kind of want to do. Like I could definitely see myself. Um, I could definitely see myself being like a LatAm focused VC in the future, something like that.
And there is every time more investors and VC taking this this strategy, raising money in the US and investing in Latin America, because there is so many opportunities in Latin America. But most of them, like if you want to find them and execute well on them, you kind of need to be on the ground. And I
Hmm.
mean, like being really on the ground, not just staying in like Condesa in Mexico City and just speaking English. You know what I mean? Like really
Yeah.
be understanding what you are, where you are.
Well, someone in Condesa is probably more on the ground than me because I'm up in the mountains, far from any tech hubs. I'm
Mm.
like, in the coffee zone. Uh,
Oh,
no, that's cool though. Tell me something. So these venture capital firms, like a LatAm venture capital firm, who are their LPs? Are they getting, because a typical LP for a US firm is going to be pension funds, family offices, uh, big time tech CEOs or high net worth individuals. Trying to think who else. What's it called? University endowments, things like
yeah.
that. So I'm guessing that the makeup of institutional capital for a Latin American VC firm is different. Could you speak to that a little bit?
So most of them raise money from the US too. So even like Latin American VC firm have American LPs, but they also have like local LPs. So it can be anything from business angel, a lot of traditional entrepreneurs, because usually the general partner at VC firms in Latin America, they are well connected. They went to a good school, good university in Latin America. They come maybe from a good family, and then they sell to their network. And you know there is a lot of institutional or traditional money in Latin America, so they get access to them. There was a few exit too. So like startup founder from the region who have made an exit are usually LPs into local VC firm. And actually, I don't really know if they have money from government. I don't think so.
Yeah, I wouldn't say government, but yeah, university endowments, pension funds. Um, Pension funds are one of the biggest ones, right?
Well,
Um,
actually, I remember now. I talked with a VC from Mexico, and he told me that the first generation of VC firm in Mexico were backed by a government program that was running at the time, and it
hmm,
was it was closed by the current administration. But the first generation C were backed by government, and I'm pretty sure like funds in Chile are also backed
yeah,
by the Chilean government, like special
and
program into.
And nothing wrong with that because in Canada, a lot of the early VC firms were largely government funded. I'm sure in France,
It's only
it's
that in
it's
France.
it's pretty government heavy. I'm
Yeah,
just
I,
guessing.
I I talked with a VC in this summer when I was in Paris, and she told me, but like half of the fund is from the government.
Yeah, it's insane,
Yeah,
insane. For example, in Mexico, though, I haven't done like a super deep dive on this, but maybe you know Coppel, the uh, appliance company. It's kind of like a Walmart.
yeah,
Have you heard of
Copper, yeah,
Coppel?
yeah, yeah,
And there's Bank Coppel. It's like the bank farm, and you buy your fridge there, or you can buy like anything there, like a microwave, an ATV, anything. Really big. I mean, they have them in every city in Mexico, like over 100 locations. And I was reading about the family behind Coppel because it started in Sinaloa, and they some of the descendants, because now it's like the third generation of this family managing the Coppel business, which I think is on the Mexican stock market. And some of the kids are actually running a VC firm now, kind of from their family office, and they're investing in early stage startups in Mexico, right? So, and
yeah,
I think also the people behind Oxo, who are based in Monterrey, they also have a VC firm as well, and they invest, I think, primarily in fintech and other things as well. So I think a lot of the big corporations in Mexico have either a VC arm or the wealthy family behind them. Sometimes, like is dabbling in VC, things like that. Is that, have you seen any examples of this?
Yeah, and in the last 2 years, it has grown a lot. So most of the capital in Latin America, like from 2021, was actually from the US. So it was US VC investing into Latin America. But then when they left, because it was a funding winter, the corporate fund saw an opportunity. So many big corporations, like you say, like Oxo, it's the corporate behind Oxo is FEMSA. So FEMSA, it's kind of a crazy company. So FEMSA used to make and still making like Coca-Cola bottles for the Mexican market.
Right.
And they made so much money with that they started to diversify. And now they have Oxo, they have a fintech, they have many things, but they are very strong on the tech side. So they also have a corporate VC. So they have a corporate VC and they are very active, as you say, primarily into fintech. And they are not the only one. Like most big corporations in Mexico and Latin America have spun out a corporate VC in the last 2 3 years, and some of them even before. And they are very active. And on the other side, the guy you said from the descendant of these big families, what they usually have is a family office. So family office
Hmm.
is like a VC, but the only LP or investor into the fund are one family.
Hmm.
And there are many, like there are many in Mexico and Latin America, because the new generation, they need to keep investing and diversifying the money, and they are more open to the startup world and technology than their parents or grandparents. So they are using the family office to make some startup investment
Hmm.
and BLPs into VC too.
Yeah, yeah, definitely makes sense. Um, and is it pretty well understood, like who are the top VC firms in Mexico or in Latin America?
Yeah, like pure player. Like when we are talking about pure player, which are like general partner, raising money, investing with a thesis, a brand and
Hmm.
stuff. Like if we don't talk about business angel or family office, like the big names are very well known.
Who are like the top three, just so we can Google them?
I don't know if they are the top three, but like the one I have in mind, like right now, like from top of mind from Mexico, let's say, or Mexico or LatAm.
Uh, Mexico and then LatAm.
Okay, so Mexico there is high VC, so high HI, which used to be all VC. They are like the most famous one, I guess.
Okay.
There is Cometa, which is a kind of newer one, but very good one because a lot of operators. Wolef also,
Wolef.
yeah, Wollef.
Okay. Yep.
Uh, there is many more, but like top of mind, I'm thinking about these three. In Latin America, like the biggest name are like the like of Kazek. Kazek actually are the founder of Mercado Libre, who made an exit, and
Hmm.
from that money they raised a fund to invest.
Okay. Kazek.
Yeah, Kazek. You have Magma
Okay.
Partner. So Magma Partner, they are from Chile. So it's an American who went to do Startup Chile, I guess, and now he's living in Mexico. He's not the only general partner, but Nathan, I think it's one Nathan. So Magma Partner is a big one too, mix of Chile
Okay.
and Mexico. Redwood Venture from Guadalajara,
Redwood
and
Ventures. Okay.
yeah, many more. That I don't want to forget someone. SoftBank used to have a fund here. They spin out. Oh, and the big one is Bicycle. So Bicycle is from Marcelo Clor. I don't know if you know the billionaire Marcelo Clor from Bolivia.
No, not off the top of my head.
So he's
Fiscal
a
capital.
billionaire from Bolivia, and he was like
Hmm.
SoftBank CEO right hand or something like that. and now he has his own fund. So they are investing in late stage. So they are making very little investment, like very few investment, but big check,
Mhm.
and it's called Bicycle. Big one
Cool. Yeah,
too.
it kind of rings a bell. And which one's like the oldest or most prestigious, like the KPMG or Sequoia of LatAm VCs?
It's hard to say. I will say Kazakh for sure.
Okay.
Magma Partner also. It's a very old one and well established. High VCs have been here for they have been in the game for a long time, and they raised a lot of money. Mm, yeah, that's the main name I have in mind. I'm probably forgetting some.
Okay, cool. And do you think that, like, what would it take to raise money from a LatAm VC firm? Is it any different, the process of raising money compared to in the US? Do they, maybe it's less competitive in that sense where you don't have to be growing as quickly as a US company or something like that? Or maybe you need less money in Latin America because you're paying people less. And so they can, I don't know, maybe it's easier to raise money if it's less. Are there, what would be some good tips for raising money from LatAm VC firms?
So on the contrary, so when I was raising, I was pitching to US VC and Latin VC, and
Hmm.
I've had the opportunity to talk with many founders who have raised from the US and from Latin America. Usually, it's a mix of both because you don't raise just from one VC. You mix from a group of VC. You raise from
Right.
a group of VC, and it's easier to raise from a US VC, being a startup in Latin America, than raising from a Latin American VC, so local VC.
Right. Makes sense because they're probably a little bit more conservative, more slow moving.
Exactly. They are more conservative. They want half of your startup for 1,000 pesos. It's like, and so yeah, so they are more risk averse. Not all of them, but most of them. And usually it's easier to raise from the US, and it's just easier.
Okay, that definitely makes sense. And then tell me about the community, I guess, in Mexico or in Latin America. Are there a lot of meetups? Are there a lot of conferences? How do you feel the optimism and the sense of community is in the startup scene?
Um, so let's say Mexico. I feel, and even in Latin America, there is a difference between an ecosystem and a community. And an ecosystem means there is startups and founder. A community means there is startup and founder growing together or interacting. There is a sense of community,
Hmm.
and there is big ecosystem in Latin America, but there are still small communities. Mexico is doing great, is doing better, and initiative like the Tech Week. So last year it was the first Tech Week in Mexico. It was
Yeah.
a big success. It's gonna be the second edition this year,
Isn't
like
it just
next
coming
week.
up next week?
Yeah, next week. So it's starting on Monday. So on
Okay.
the I don't know. Right now we are the 16th
Like,
of October. I think it's starting on the 21 or something like that.
okay. Well, it'll be in the past because I think this will come out like first week in November.
Okay, but yeah, so it was a big success, and it's this kind of initiative that really build communities more than ecosystem because it gives a space for people to connect and to interact and to share and to meet. So, and after that, every country, like major country in Latin America, they started to do their tech week. So last year was the first one in Mexico, and then this year you had tech week in Colombia, tech week in, I don't know, Peru, Bolivia, Argentina. So this kind of initiative build community, but so the communities are smaller than the ecosystem, but they are growing.
Makes sense. And I imagine Mexico is by far the biggest startup scene in Latin America.
Yeah, like not taking into account Brazil, obviously, because Sao Paulo is bigger.
Okay, so Sao Paulo is actually a bigger startup scene than Mexico City?
Yeah. So when I'm talking about Latin America, I'm mostly not talking about Brazil, which is kind of weird, but I'm talking about Spanish-speaking Latin America. And Brazil is like its own continent on its own, right? Brazil, it's bigger. So if you take everything I said, like in term of startup, Brazil it's more advanced, bigger, more capital, more money, more founder, more everything.
Yeah, I mean it is double the population, but even still, I would have thought it wouldn't be quite as advanced as Mexico.
No, they are way ahead.
Way ahead. Wow.
Yeah.
Even despite of their Lula and their insane politics over there. But okay, so if you had to rank like the top five, I'm guessing it's Brazil, Mexico, and then what?
Colombia.
Chile or Colombia?
I will say Colombia now. It was Chile in the past. I will say Colombia have grown a lot in the last 2 years. So now I will say like Brazil.
Uh huh.
Um, I hope I won't receive a lot of haters on Twitter for what I said because people are sensitive with that. But let's say for me, like, and there is no data backing it, it would be Brazil, Mexico, Colombia, Chile, Argentina.
Okay.
But there is no data backing it. It's just like my own ranking like that.
Yeah. Maybe we'll see El Salvador on that list at some point.
Yeah. Salvador is growing. I mean, they are growing, they are attracting talent, they are attracting capital, they are attracting investors.
And what are you hearing on your side from El Salvador? Are you hearing examples of maybe founders or funds moving to El Salvador or people raising money from El Salvador? It is the USD and stuff after all. Or is it, what are you seeing?
No, people are still cautious about Salvador. It's too early for people to really make a move, but they start to they're interested. So some of them go there like to visit, to meet the ecosystem. They start to ask questions about it. They are following what's happening, but I haven't seen yet people making the move, like big move going into Salvador. But they are optimistic, but they are just waiting for more time to see how things develop.
Yeah, very cool.
But it's funny because if you read about what's happening in El Salvador from outside Latin America, usually it's like mostly about the bad and the ugly. And when you talk with people in Latin America, I mean, in my group of people I talk with about El Salvador, they see more of the good side of what's happening. And if you talk with people, I know maybe from the US or from France, especially from France, they will be like, "Oh no, there is no democracy, and it's a dictature, and it's no freedom of speech, and blah blah blah." Which actually it's true, but I mean, also they are not seeing the other side of the story, which is safety, development, and stuff like that. So when you talk with Latinos about it, and they're like, "Hey, do you want like you prefer what freedom of speech or safety?" It's like I can take safety maybe because they really know what it means to be in a country which is not safe, and in any case they don't really have freedom of speech either. So
I wonder if at some point the LatAm tech ecosystem will actually surpass Europe. That's probably a tall task.
yeah.
But
No, I don't think so, because I mean I know people love to criticize Europe, especially on Twitter, but things are not going that bad in Europe, and like there is still more fund, like more investor from the US investing in Europe than in Latin America, because for them, like it's still a more developed country, so like there is way more capital, and Europe don't attract only capital from the US, but they have their own capital, and they also attract capital from Middle East, Asia, Africa. So at the end of the day, like, or maybe, but we are talking about 50 years or plus, you know, like in the next 20 years or 10 years, no way.
Yeah, yeah, who knows? I mean, there's like parts of Mexico where GDP per capita is already higher than a lot of parts of Europe. You know, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, but just a small part of Mexico. I mean, it will be like comparing it to Luxembourg or Switzerland, you know, like if you want to compare a small part of Mexico, compare it with a small part of Europe, which is the richest part.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, Paraguay is growing too.
Yeah, I'm a big fan I'm not big fan, but I'm very interested in what's happening in Paraguay. Like I keep an eye closely on Paraguay. A lot
Mhm.
of potential for Paraguay.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, Europe's kind of going a direction where they're just not giving up on shooting themselves in the foot with like all the regulations and everything. And it's just getting harder and harder every year. And it doesn't seem to be reversing at all. Whereas in
Yeah,
Latin America, like pretty much every country is getting better, except maybe arguably like Brazil or something. But pretty much every country is getting better.
I don't know. Huh? When you talk with Colombian or Mexican, they are not all super happy with the direction the countries are going.
Yeah, yeah. I guess Colombia, they don't like who they have for president right now, but it's obviously still a lot better than it was even 15 years ago.
Oh yeah.
Um, so it's definitely getting better. I don't know. The freedom to do business, I just feel like it's a lot easier to make money in Latin America than it is in Europe, probably.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm I'm not so sure about that, but
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll have to see. Well, thank you for coming on and explaining to us a little bit about the tech community and the startup community in Latin America.
yeah. I mean,
What's
in
what's the,
startup, there's a lot of opportunities. Like if you're a startup founder, and I know a lot also. Like I don't know what your audience is mostly, but I guess there is a lot of Americans. I know a lot of founders here who have their startup in the US, selling to the US market, and they are based in Latin America because they have a good quality of life, they spend less, and they can hire local talents. And this way, they reduce their operational cost. And I see that as a big trend. And I even met one yesterday, like super randomly in Bogota, and I think that's a big opportunity. Like for sure, in the startup world, uh, I met American who are like, yeah, I was too young to move to SF when it was the startup boom, so I don't want to miss out the new startup boom happening next door. So I think that's a big opportunity, and not from the US, not only from the US. I know a lot of European founder coming here. I'm European. I'm not in France anymore. I'm betting on Latin America. So it's definitely it's a risky bet, but it's a bet worth taking, I guess.
Mhm. And just so I know, for you, is the game plan for you to be more based in Colombia going forward, or
No, still Mexico, Mexico
still in
City.
Mexico? Okay,
Yeah,
cool, man.
based in Mexico City and traveling to Colombia as much as I can.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll have to get some micheladas at some point.
Yeah, sure. If you're in Mexico City, shoot me a message.
For sure, man. Awesome. Did you want to take this time and let the audience know again where they can find you, where they can find the Substack, and any final message you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, so if you speak or read English, my content in English is on Twitter. So my handle is Arnaud underscore Scenius, I guess, or Arnaud Scenius Mexico. I forgot my underscore, but maybe you can share the link. And Scenius Mexico is a newsletter, which are my two main content in English. And if you want to be up to date with what's happening in the startup ecosystem in Latin America, that's the place to be, like Twitter and the newsletter.
Sounds good. We'll put a link in the description as well to your Twitter so people can catch you there. Cool, man. Well, this has been another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Again, our guest today, Arnaud from Scenius LatAm, SceniusMexico.com as well. And for the audience, please be sure to subscribe to the podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening to this. We put out 2 episodes a week with amazing guests like Arnaud. And we'll catch you in the next episode. Ciao for now.
Thank you. Bye.
Hey guys, quick note at the end of the episode here. If you made it this far, you might be interested in working with My Latin Life personally to make progress on your internationalization plan. So whether the next step for you is getting residency in Latin America, lowering your taxes, choosing the best country, maybe a little birth tourism, whatever the next step is for you, of course, My Latin Life can help. We've helped people in their 20s, their 40s, their 60s, because I truly believe that Latin America has something to offer people at every stage of life. So if you want to become our VIP client, if you want to work with Vance, myself directly, book a call. There will be a link in the description. There will be a small fee for the initial consultation, and we do that to filter out the time wasters and focus on the best of the best clients. But if you're listening to this podcast and you made it all the way through the episode, I know you're the best of the best. But we're ready to work with you. So book that call. Hope you enjoyed this episode of the My Latin Life podcast, and we'll catch you in the next one.